I'm Hee-Jung Ryu, Professor of Psychiatry of Seoul National University, and I'm leading this workshop. So today we have 2.5 hours of instruction, and originally this program was developed in Seoul National University Bundang Hospital, and we are now regularly having workshop for educating this program with the coalition with the publisher. It is normally 2 days workshop, 8 hours a day, and which means a 16 hours workshop, which is very intense and long, but we just have 2.5 hours, so it will be very short form, and it's just an introduction of what we have and what they are doing and something like that. So if you are more interested in the whole contents, unfortunately it is still available in Korea and in Korean language. We have a book manual. So if you are living in Korea and if you are familiar with the Korean language, you can refer this manual for whole content. So today's workshop is constructed as this content. In the first part, I will cover a little bit of a theoretical and for rationale for intervention program for autistic adults and develop the procedures of this program. And then we mainly cover the session contents and the session structures and contents. For this program has 12 sessions, so we will cover very kind of shortly all the main contents of each session, and lastly we can discuss about the utilization or expansion of the program. I think this part is already everybody might be already familiar with this part. Why are interventions needed for adults with ASD? Because the general maxim, the first premise is that the largest group among individuals with ASD, autistic individuals, are adults. Although it has been diagnosed or it is beginning or diagnosed in very early years, diagnostic stability is quite stable. If you are diagnosed as being autistic in your childhood, the diagnosis is quite stable, over than 80% until the adulthood. It's very true that we have just the 10 years of childhood and 6 years of adolescence, and then we are living for 60 something years as adults. So the largest group among autistic individuals are adults. And also the nearly 50 or 50 to, in these days, the less and less autistic person have comorbid intellectual disability. The reports say the more and more so-called high-functioning individuals are diagnosed as having autistic disorder. So nearly 50 or maximally 70% of the autistic individuals are considered high-functioning, which means that they are a little bit excluded from the welfare system, and they are in the mainstream school, and they are in outside the special education services. Even they are competing with other typical adults when they are entering the college or finding the job. So they have to have skills which have to be survived in the community with the typical people. But where are they? They are inside our community. Are you familiar with that show? It's Love on the Spectrum. It is presented in Netflix, and it's a story that autistic individuals are finding their dating partners. It's very inspiring, and at the same time, it's very fun. Probably it's a real picture of autistic individuals in the community rather than any other fictions such as Atypical or something. And also, the adult outcomes are quite heterogeneous. Some autistic adults is thriving in the community very well, but some adults, even if they do not have intellectual disability, they are quite struggling in surviving in the community. Many researchers, including Kathy Lode in UCLA, observed and researched regarding the adult outcomes and associated variables, whether they have a favorable outcome or not. Almost all findings indicate autistic adults struggle with achieving independent living and employment, maintaining friendship, managing co-occurring mental health conditions, and kind of poorer quality of life compared to the typical counterparts. But at the same time, the study said that their outcomes are quite variable. It has spectrum as well. And it is said that the multiple factors determine the prognosis. Classically, the most potent determining factor for for the so-called prognosis, the outcome of the autistic adults are IQ. It was IQ and language ability. Sometimes the language ability when they are, the 4 years of age or something like that. It is very fixed variables. But recent studies, there are other factors, not only for the IQ and language, there are many other factors which determine the outcome of the autistic adults. Of course, if the autistic symptoms are severe, their outcomes might be complicated because they have a lot of stereotyped behaviors and preoccupations and etc. etc. The researchers are emphasizing the function of mental health issues. If they have internalizing or externalizing problems or mental health problems, the outcome is quite poor rather than compared to the counterpart who do not have that. Also, executive functioning and daily living skill is quite observable things, but it is very much ignored rather than to IQ and language levels. But everybody adaptive skills, ADL, also called ADL, everyday adaptive skills, very kind of superficial ecological adaptive skills such as getting dressed, following rules, knowing when to go to the doctor. I mean, the medical care of the health issues are also crucial for independent living. And there's a big push to focus more on adaptive skills rather than to IQ itself. What I have observed in my genetic research is that IQ is quite a fixed variable and IQ is quite very much genetically determined, fortunately or unfortunately. So increasing IQ is not a very smart strategy to help them, but the empowering or the increasing or enhancing everyday adaptive skills are quite trainable. Sometimes it's a little bit independent from the IQ. So adaptive skills can be changed, whereas we are not good at changing IQ. So this is the quotation from the Lancet Commission paper, and it is emphasizing the intervention should be tailored depending on the age and developmental levels of all different individuals. So in the adolescence and adulthood, they are emphasizing the anxiety and mental health issues and economic achievement, social participation, and vocational professional training as well. Very realistic skills. So it is kind of preposition that we have something for, we have to have something for the adults, autistic adults. But unfortunately, there is very huge gap between the demands and supply for some evidence-based programs and interventions for adults with ASD. PEERS program is very popular and famous social skills training developed by Liz Larson in UCLA. So more than 10 years ago, we translated and implemented these programs into Korea. After translation and cultural adaptation and a randomized control trial, we did the randomized control trial for peers for teens in 10 years ago. And afterwards has been a program for the autistic adults, adult version. And when we did the randomized control trial with very similar design. In adolescents, what we observed is that their social skills, social knowledge, and frequency that they meet their friends, and even the BDI, BAI, anxiety, depression, or even the parental variables are robustly changed after the intervention, which is very, very dramatic. And it covers every single aspect of social skills, social knowledge, and social cognition. And it is being, presented quite regularly in my hospital and the other institution as well. But for young adults, we had a similar randomized control trial for the similar size of groups. But unfortunately, the effect was not that robust as teens. So the improvement in the social knowledge has been observed very strongly. And they have improvement in social skills after being followed up for 4 months later. But the domains that they have been helped was very limited. So it is quite kind of disappointing, but we thought, I and my team assumed that there are a few implications. First of all, the social skills intervention is way better to be implemented in the early years, at least their teen years. So social skills trainings are very good. Sometimes somebody needs it very urgently, but at the same time, the effectiveness and observable effectiveness and changes are not very strong as teens. There are several several factors. The peers program is basically the parent-assisted programs. So if the teens, if they are under the influence of the parents, it is very well implemented in their population. But if they are a little bit independent, they are a little bit out of the influence of the parents, influence was very minimal, so hard for them to do something, do homework or something like this. So adult is very hard. The first implication is that social skills trainings are most effective in early years. And the second implication is that adults need something else rather than the social interaction, the training for the social interaction. And my clinical intuition is that it might not be the evidence, but it's intuition that social functioning may not represent the primary challenge in autistic individuals. I have several so-called very, very high functioning is quite in a term which is not very politically correct, but as a convenience, highest functioning individuals with ASD. Somebody is going medical school and somebody is under their PhD candidate in a very pronounced university and something like that. And they are struggling. Of course, they are struggling with the relations. But it's not, the most important thing is the struggle, the relationship, but also that there is no support in the community, in the society they are belonging to. Also, the executive function or daily life are the most problematic for them. For example, medical students are most smartest students in Korea, but they fail in the exam because they fail to find the classroom where the examination is taken. Can you believe that? And they fail the exam because they forgot the date and time of the examination. So that is executive function, and that is everyday living skill, not the social relationship. If they do have a social relationship, if they had a very close peer to tell them where the exam is and when the exams are. But before that, they have to have skills to check their diary, and they have to have skill to write down the timetable, and also they have to have skills that the instructions from professors, from the teacher's assistant should be written, something like that. So my intuition and my team's intuition is common issue in transitions are quite variable, independent self-help, relationship with peers and parents as well, and also romantic relationship, and post-secondary education, and realistic career planning, mental health issues, and seeking helps from the medical professionals. Underneath that, there are common challenges of ASD, such as executive function, central coherence, which is seeing from the outside and seeing a big picture rather than to every single detail, and cognitive flexibility, which is very problematic sometimes, and self-control, self-discipline, and theory of mind, and a lack of motivation, lack of goal, and lack of knowledge regarding what the goal is, and low self-esteem, self-adequacy, and mental health issues. So that's the background which we decided to make something for helping their executive function. And also, it's not exactly the executive function, it's a daily life. So the brain function underline the daily living skill and everyday living. So executive function is a very theoretical terms. It is higher order cognitive processing, primarily mediated by the prefrontal cortex, as you already know. So it has a lot of different domains, such as planning, decision-making, working memory, because probably the psychologists here are very familiar with that, and priority setting, and sequencing, initiation, organization, judgment, self-monitoring, use of feedback, time management, and also impulse control and emotional regulation is a function of prefrontal cortex. So there are a bunch of researches that the autistic individuals have different functions in the prefrontal cortex, even if they do not have overt ADHD symptoms or borderline intelligence or whatever. ADHD itself have a different profiles of the prefrontal function. The researchers said that this function is closely linked to the social adaptation as well. As we think about the social social relationship. It is all the summary of executive function. When we comes to meet somebody, how to regulate our own dialogue and how to regulate our own emotion and cognition, and how to decide if we approach them or do not approach them, or what is priority of social relationship, what is sequencing of the social relationship. So social relationship looks like very emotional, but it is total sum of executive function, I think. Vulnerable executive function can hinder independent living during the transition to adulthood. As I told you before, the very primary level living skills, adaptive skills for autistic adults are like this. Personal hygiene. They are very ignorant of their own hygiene. So we teach them how to keep clean. Even in the peers program, how to keep your hygiene is very important part of that program as well. So hygiene and selecting context appropriate clothing and navigating new locations and transportation system. Some autistic individuals are very excellent in that, especially they have the preoccupation or limited interest in the metro system or train system. They are very keen, very excellent. But others, they are not very organized to use every single different kind of transportation. It is very tightly related to the time management as well. And also, as I told you, managing academic demands and long-term assignment and responding effectively to unexpected changes. Responding to unexpected changes are one of the most weakest area they are coping with, I think. So it is basically the character of autistic individuals. So they like to stick to the routines, they like to stick to the rules, and they like to stick to the predetermined sequence. And if something changes, they are overwhelmed. They are being anxious. So responding to unexpected changes are quite important part. And budgeting. This is it is executive function, and also it is a part of the environmental and social familial things as well. Sometimes they are very poor at planning and making priority. And sometimes they put too much importance for their own preoccupation. They want to spend too much money to their own limited interest. And sometimes the families are not very confident about their performances and about their ability to control themselves. So I sometimes ask the kids, the 10 years, 11 years, 12 years, regarding their spending money. Do you get the money for your own use from parents regularly? And 90% of them do not get the regular salary from their parents, which means that they do not have any chance to learn how to regulate their own budget from early childhood. That is quite understandable. Parents they are anxious. They would like to protect them as long as they possible. But the things are not changed abruptly. I think they should train their offspring from very early childhood. Anyway, budgeting and making purchasing decision is quite a hard thing for them. And identifying, that is the advanced levels of decision making, identifying careers and preparing for employment, and very practical steps for preparation for employment, and sustaining collaborative workplace relationship, which is our own long-term goal to help them. If they fulfill this goal, we don't have anything to do for them. So sustaining collaborative relationship in their workplace. And all of those are from our clinical experiences and intuitions and observation and researches. So those things are very everyday life things, but those involve the deeper level of executive functioning, such as, for example, keeping personal hygiene and clothing, even context and seasonally appropriate clothing. It needs organization, sequencing, planning, and decision making, or adaptation to change as well. And for example, budgeting, it needs planning, priority, decision making, and impulse control. As we already know, we are struggling with the impulse control when it comes to the shopping. And cognitive flexibility is a key thing. And managing academic demands needs planning, initiation, and time management. And sustaining collaborative workplace relationship, we need all of this kind of executive functioning. So we decided something for adults for helping them to build up their everybody skills with utilizing executive function training. So we named it at first a surviving toolkit for autistic adults. We changed the name as a publishable thing, but at first it was surviving toolkits. So for some very trivial thing for survival. So we would like to cover, we intended to cover very everyday examples or daily the executive functioning. So we decided to divide it into two parts. The first part is the didactic and then teaching for the concepts and a little bit of practice. And second part is application part. We learn for 5 weeks regarding the different kinds of executive functioning and do a little bit of training and practice. And afterwards, the second 7 weeks, they are applying that to the everyday living as like household management, financial management, and adaptation to new environment, job searching, preparing for a job interview, and professional life as well. So the name of this program is Executive Function and Adaptive Behavior Education, EFABE, and is published last year. As like this. I would like to describe a little bit about the development procedures. Yeah, as like all the other intervention programs, we defined the goals and objectives, and one of the characteristics of our program is that we implement the stakeholder viewpoint. When we translated the peers program, even we translated that, I invited some stakeholders. In teens program, I surveyed the typical middle school students in the community regarding their social activities and meetups and their way to resolve those conflicts and etc. etc. And when we developed the adult version of peers, I interviewed 30 typical adults regarding their romantic relationship, how to find the partners of romantic relationship, and what is etiquette for the dating, or what are their favorite social meetups, or etc. etc. So we implemented that kind of contents into our program. So that's the signature of our programs. And in this group as well, she did focus group interview for the autistic individuals and parents and professionals as well, to organize these contents and to fit the contents, to adapt these contents to fit their own needs and their own difficulties. And we composed the program and selected outcome measures and did 2 studies with these programs. The first one was pilot study, which showed the feasibility and the changes before and after the implementing the program. And we revised that after the program, and we did a randomized control trial with the waitlist control groups and the effectiveness evaluation, and monitor and managed. This is the pilot study of this program. This is mainly involving the changes between and after the program, and we measured all the outcome measures in the midpoint, and it shows that the program is quite feasible, and they are satisfied with that program. Many of them think that it's a little bit difficult to follow. So we adapted the difficulty level afterwards, and we added 2 sessions. We elongated the sessions from 10 to 12. And we observed that the executive function, their usage is changing during the process of the program. That is our first finding. And in the second randomized controlled trial, we randomized 37 adults into 2 groups. The primary treatment group and wait list control group. We observed that the utility of executive functions are significantly improved, and the various domains of daily life functions has been improved after the program. Characteristics or core features of this program is this. The first one, we named it stepwise sequencing of concepts. We introduced every single concept in every session, and we divide divide the concept into the small domains and small pieces of the steps. And the second one is to focus on real-life application. And there are multifaceted practical exercise for generalization. So there are practices inside the session. Also, there are much homeworks to do. So I would like you to be exposed to this practice in this workshop as well. So we prepared some materials for the practice as like you are the participant of this program. The other feature of this program is being repeated. The one concept is repeated over and over again. So when you introduce one concept in the first session, second session, the fourth session, 6, 7, 8, or something like that. So it is kind of it is very educational. It is a kind of cumulative practice. Our intention is that they have very cumulative knowledge about every single concept. We named it as making habits. So in every single sessions, there is a making habits sections. Also, it is tailored to the characteristics of adults with ASD, of course, because we are aimed to help them, such as the cognitive flexibility and sequenced steps and employing process. So we are emphasizing for that because their needs is mainly for that. But at the same time, I assume that it is not for the autistic adults. It might be applied to the other adults who have other kinds of neurodevelopmental issues as well. And also, characteristics of autistic individuals they are very familiar and they are very keen to visual materials. So we use visualization of learning materials as a form of PowerPoint and pictures as well. So composition of sessions are like this. The first session is the introduction, understanding of the objective of the program and concepts of executive functioning. So we long time to explain about the concepts of executive functioning, why we are here. So introducing the program and goals in what is executive functions and what the subdomains are, and also how to identify your own executive functions and etc. And how executive functions are related to our own life. So intro section is quite heavy, but I think it's very useful. And the second section is planning and organization. It's very low-hanging fruit. So planning is very observable. We are very easy to observe what the planning is. So planning and observation is second session. And third session is time management, understanding how to manage time. So how to prioritize things based on importance. The priority setting and time management are the flip side of the coin. So we have to know priority when we can manage the time very effectively. So we teach the prioritizing in this session as well, and how to make a weekly plan and create a list of reward. So this is very heavy and labor-intensive process. So in this session, we put the sections to create reward for yourself. So that is the third session. And the fourth session is emotion regulation and stress management. The fifth one is cognitive flexibility. It's the highlight of the theoretical sessions. The sixth session is application of daily life activities and taking care of yourself. So, including visiting the doctors. And the second session is adapting in new environment. It is tightly linked to the fifth session of the cognitive flexibility, and application to financing and budgeting, and job searching, application to introducing yourself to the workplace. It's like the writing CV. And the 11 is application to job interview, the very practical issues of job interviews. And the last session is application to professional life, the workplace etiquette and basics or something like that. It is quite advanced lessons. The session typically composed of 6 to 8 participants. We recommend the more than that is a little bit hard because there are a lot of homeworks to be reviewed and there are a lot of practices. If the group is larger than 8, there is a shortage of time. So 6 to 8 would be probably appropriate. And once weekly 12 sessions, 2 hours per session. This is quite intense. And session components are repeated very regularly in every single session. So homework review, except for the first session, and topic discussion. We open the topics on the table and let them to discuss about these concepts. And third one is didactic lesson. Without didactic lesson, autistic individuals cannot improve. That's my belief. And that's the belief of the Liz Lagason, who developed the PEERS program. There should be a didactic education lesson, even in the social skills training for very young children. If they make some metacognitive landscape in the concepts or the processes, it cannot be generalized in the daily lives. So that is my belief. So there is didactic lesson, and activities for practice is following. And the last part is homework assignment. Now we are in the specific contents. The first session, I explained that. The first session is intro. The title is Let's Explore My Executive Function. It's a session for identifying concepts as well as identifying yourself. So every single session, there is an intro part which shows that how to identify yourself. Self-monitoring is one of the weakest parts of them as well. For autistic individuals and for the individuals with ADHD as well, every single kinds of neurodevelopmental issue of self-monitoring. So we intentionally put let's talk about your own executive function, your own ability of planning, your own opinion about your budgeting, your own status of something. So in this lesson, we are explaining what is executive function and types of executive function very theoretically. For example, there is a head of the company, and there are different departments, and the financing department, personnel department, and execution or something like that. And every department has people who are in charge of financing and the paperwork and personnel and marketing and selling products as well. So there is a hierarchy, and there is a CEO who directs everything. In our brain, there is also a function as like the chair of the company, which is called executive function, and it is function of prefrontal cortex in the front part of our brain. That is theoretical framework, and there are several types of executive functions, such as organization. Under the organization, there are hierarchy, which is time management, planning, and cognitive flexibility. And there is emotion regulation. Emotion regulation has different pathways, so it's a little bit different domains. So there it is also the executive function. So it's like the company has these different domains and person. We have different domains of executive function, and it is incorporated into the organization, and we can achieve the goal. Though we put much labor and time to explain this one. The first concept we teach is planning. What is planning? Planning is multiple steps to achieve the goal. For example, we are under the mountain. If we say that our goal is going to the top of the mountain, we should plan. So there are steps. It's like this. We have to keep something, and we have to manage our time. When we have to decide whether we run, whether we take some break, or whether we walk or something like that. And most importantly, we have to prepare to happen for the unexpected things to be happened. So such as there is these things, it might be raining, unexpected, but we have to expect that possibility beforehand we start to to hike. So when it comes to the changes of the environment, or especially if it is unexpected things, we don't have to go further. We have to be detour, and we have to calculate our time once more again. And also we might have to change our plan. If we had a plan to have a lunch after we come down of the mountain, we might cancel that because we have different timeline, such kind of things. So that is planning. The planning is multiple steps to achieve our goal. And also we are teaching there is a short-term plan, long-term plan, and there is a short-term goal, long-term goal, intermediate goal, and there is multiple steps to achieve the long-term goal or something like this. So, but the key points of the first session is making concepts of planning. So this is the practice we are explaining the planning function in the sessions to the participant of our group. We have 3 different subjects, such as making instant. Are you familiar with that? There is instant ramen in Korea. The cooking, the boiling instant ramen. The second example is the purchasing of mobile phone is a little larger stuffs, and cleaning my room. So we pick one example and let them to practice it. For example, in making instant ramen, we have to decide. It's very, very simple thing. Still, we need a planning to that. So it is helping for them to see planning involves every single step of our lives. So we have to decide which kind of ramen do you like to cook. And we have to boil the water. We have to decide whether we put the powder first and noodle first, and then calculate the time for cooking it and this one. So even in very simplistic practices like the making instant ramen, we need some planning. And also we teach the concept of organization in the first session. Organization is the ability to integrate and arrange information according to specific purpose. Very hard, very difficult concept. For example, that is what we are doing every day. Especially if you are a psychologist, you are doing every day. For example, we have this kind of the shapes, and then we can organize these things. There are several different ways of organization. What can you organize this? Colors, yes, excellent. And also shapes. This is organization. Organization is arrange or classify or integrate according to a specific purpose or characters. So time management is the ability to divide and manage the limited time available to perform daily activities, study, or work. So what is time management? Such as like you already explained, weekly timetable, daily timetable, and monthly timetable, or something like that. It is very impressive that when it comes to this practice, let them practice this one. For example, person A, you live in Samsungdong is here, Seoul. You have an appointment to watch a movie with a friend at 3 p.m. at Gangnam Station on Saturday. Gangnam Station is 3 stations away from here by Metro Line 2. And you wake up at 11 a.m. When should you start getting ready to go out? How do you manage your time when you come to this type of situation? We have to calculate our time upside down. It is great to arrive in Gangnam Station at like 2:50, 10 to 3. Or if you have to retrieve our movie ticket, just in case, we have to arrive there like 20 to 3 or something like that. So we have to calculate the time upside down from 2:40, and then the duration of metro, 3 stations or 10 minutes, and walking down the train station and waiting for the time for the metros come, the 10 minutes and 20 minutes, something like this. So we have to leave like, I think that 1:30 might be enough. One of the most surprising things that I observe in our participants is that I will leave right now because we don't have to. We should not be late or something like that. And then when you go out right now, you can arrive in the Gangnam Station at like 11:12, something like that. What would you do until 2:40? I just walk down the street. That is the reality of many autistic adults. So we are very keen to this type of practice and conceptualization. We will repeat this kind of things all around the sessions. Also, emotion regulation. What is emotion regulations? We put the definition of that and use visual materials to understand their own emotions. And also we present the concept of cognitive flexibility. Definition is always important. Cognitive flexibility is the ability to change one's thinking or behavior when situations change. You need these skills very much because situation is always changing. That is the first premise. You need cognitive flexibility. This kind of the premises are important for our kids as well. So sometimes autistic kids are very upset when you are defeated in the game, or when your teachers are pinpointing what you did wrong, or they are struck out in the exam. They are upset and they have temper tantrum in the classroom when it comes to defeat in a board game or whatever. So the rule maxim is the game is supposed to be lose You cannot play the game without losing. You cannot take the exam without being incorrect. That is a premise. So that is what they should know. The situation is changing. That is the nature of the situation. Are very keen to this part. 자, cognitive flexibility. These shapes once more. We can arrange as like this or as like this, all the same. There's no problem to switch that, the order. So the next practice is identifying. I told you that the identifying one's own character is very one of the core features of this program. So identifying my executive function is the next practice. Among the executive functions we learned so far, which area do you think you are the best at? Or which area do you think you are the least skilled at? Explain why by connecting it to your personal experiences. So connecting is the other key points of our whole sessions. And if you are familiar with the autistic kids and also the ADOS examination, you are probably familiar with that they are very not well skilled for the connecting experiences and connecting emotions and describing their experiences according to the context or according to the narrative. It is called a narrative failure. So they are very kind of poor at describing their own experience as like the context-based, such as when, where, how, why, and who. Sometimes they fail to switch the subject in the middle of the paragraph. So that is I think that is one of the core characteristics of autistic individuals, which feels very huge difficulties in describing their own experiences. And also they are not well skilled to the connecting experience with thoughts and effects as well. If we try to interchange our experience, our interest, or our emotions, our thoughts, these three elements should be prepared to talk about something and exchange our common interest or information to each other. We have to, if we monitor ourselves when we talk about something with other person, we are describing in experience and thoughts regarding the experience and also affect regarding the experience. If those elements are lacking, our dialogues, our conversations are very dry and boring, and there is no information exchanged. So I think those are the core difficulties for them. So we introduced this concept in the first session, and we use this concept until the end of the program. So ETA connection, emotion, thought, affect. So we make them to describe their thoughts on the with these principles: experience, thoughts, and affect. So experience is actually experienced. The experience involves who, when, where, what, why, how, and thoughts. Thoughts is our judgment, and thought is easy. In this practice too, when we help them to practice their own executive functions, in the practice we involve these connecting skills in this practice as well. For example, which area do you think you are best at? I think my best area is planning, because I experienced these things. I felt very good when I experienced these things, and I thought my planning skill is very good. And when I end this day with my schedule, I feel very good. So I think my planning skill is great, or something like this. So the participants have difficulty. Almost every single participant have difficulties in connecting these three things at the first time. But when they experience the whole sessions, they are way better. And the second session is regarding planning. We introduce many concepts in the first sessions, and we pick several skills from the second session ahead. In the second session, the focus is planning, and we introduce another sequencing in the second session, which is called SMART goal setting method. When you think about the goal, I told you that the planning is the steps to achieve the goals. So we have to know what the goal is first when you have to discuss about the planning. One of the difficulties that the autistic adults have is goals are not very specific, and their goals are quite perfectionistic sometimes. One of the most difficult clients of mine, the adolescents, there are very typical patterns of the high school students, which have nice level of intelligence. Their goal is to perfect score in the college entrance exam, 100%. If they fail to do that, they take exam again next year. So they spend 10 years taking exam for 100% of the scores. And their goal is to enter the Medical College of Seoul National University, which is very ambitious goal. And if they fail to do, the alternative way to achieve the goal, which means that they have a nice profession, is to enter another available college and move on to the another step, but they do not accept that. So their goal is quite remote, unspecific, and there is no hierarchy. So we teach them a smart goal setting method. S is specific, M is measurable, A is attainable, R is relevant, T is time bounded. So this principle is repeated once and again. So we teach them that developing a plan to achieve goals, it also needs a stepwise sequencing. It's like set a main goal to achieve, and we make, you remember the organization of the company. So there should be a sub goals or sequential steps. And underneath that, there should be a detailed tasks to keep the sub goals. And always there should be a date, due date, completion date, deadline. So I should teach that to, my graduate students or everybody. There should be a due date, and it is very important. Identify reasons when plans are not implemented. So we visualize every single steps of planning. They set a main goal, sub goals, and sequential steps, and detailed tasks and dates. So we help them to memorize all these sequential steps over and over again. For example, when the main goal is to improve my English, there should be a sub goal, measurable, attainable, and observable, such as I should make 100 points in such and such examination by 2 months ahead or something like that. So this activity is most important things in the second part. And we let them practice what is the long-term goal and short-term goal. Short means less than 1 year, and then make a plan. So what the sub-goals can the goals be divided into, and specific task or steps, and time requires and deadline. Time is important. Okay, that's the planning. So there is a huge practices inside there. We raise a lot of examples of the bad planning and good planning and intermediate planning, what the sub goals are, what the main goals are, and what the tasks are, and then we interchange the practices each other. The third part is time management. The first one is scheduling and prioritization, and weekly and daily plans, and enhancing motivation for plan for implementation. I told that the motivation issue is one of the main issues. So there are 3 didactic lessons, and I introduced the first one. The first didactic for scheduling and prioritization is that to list tasks aligned with your goals, because we learned how to make the goals in the second sessions. Estimate required time and deadlines, because we learned that those are important in the previous lessons. And determine task priority. Priority is the first concept appearing in this session. Priority is one of the keywords. Determine task priorities and mark them on the planner. The planner, scheduler, is one of the important tasks of these sessions. And develop a weekly or daily plan based on your priorities and deadlines. Record task completion and actual time spent. And reschedule unfinished tasks, because everything is changed. Everything can be changed. You have to prepare the change and the follow-up and modification of your plan, and following up your further plan. Listing tasks aligned with your goals, estimate required time and deadlines. Because we practiced estimating time in the previous sessions, they can apply this for these sessions as well. And determine task priorities and mark them on the planner, and then etc. We are very cautiously, we designed this task very cautiously. We let them create to-do list and set priorities, such as think about the task you need to complete over the course of a week or a month, then write a list of the activities and set deadlines, estimated time required, and priorities. The next session is regulating emotion and stress. Emotion regulation and the managing mental health, one of the essential parts of the great outcome of autistic adults. So we emphasize the two kinds of most difficult emotions that which autistic adults can experience. One is anxiety. Second is anger. So anxiety and anger is core emotions of the very characteristics of the emotional difficulties from childhood. So we try to put this material incorporate these themes into the sessions. So as like the other sessions, we start to recognizing my emotions. So self-monitoring is one of the difficult parts that they experience, as I told you. So recognizing my own emotion is very good start point for this session, we think. So distinguishing anxiety and anger. Sometimes they have difficulty to discriminate what is anger and what is anxiety. So we explain that and we describe that, we raise the examples. And also, I think probably you are quite familiar with that kind of visual skills. So we give the examples of the situation which can raise anxiety and anger, and give them and let them describe how the degree of anxiety and anger. So that is a steps for the identifying emotions. Emotional discomfort, higher level of anxiety or higher level of anger, like the higher than 6 or higher than 7, you can tell. And we provide several strategies to control that. The first one is a breathing exercise. It's a very common thing, a very easy thing, and you can teach that from very early childhood. It's a breathing exercise, deep breath, diaphragmatic breath. It is very easy, simple, but very applicable to every single situation. And the imagination inside your brain regarding about the peaceful scenes and sceneries which you like to be. And the focus of this session is thinking differently. They learned already there is an experience, think and emotion, which is connected to each other. What emotion experience of thought is not the same whole bulk. It can be differentiated. So when you come to the emotional difficulties, you can use your thought for controlling your affect, your emotion. That is the main message. So we name it as SODA technique. S is stop, and 2 is observe, 3 is deliberate or think for a while, and 4 is action. So prevents them to what is typical process of when you presented by the emotional difficulties. And if you have a little bit of difficulty in controlling your emotion, what is the typical process when you feel emotional difficulties and then act? Right? So sometimes that is called temper tantrum, So when you are difficult emotionally, you act, you just yell, you are just get ignored, and you just leave that place right away. That might be a little bit inappropriate for the context. So we try to teach them SODA technique as stop, observe, think a little bit, and action. The action is the fourth step. The emotion does not have to be connected the action directly. If there is 3 steps between emotion and action, almost always the situation will be nicer and it is more peaceful. And you can earn your time to calm yourself down. And this technique, and repeated later the program, when the theme of the workplace stresses and workplace etiquette comes to the sessions. So those are the examples of the peaceful scenery, which you can use the imagination when you come to the stressful situation. It's nice, isn't it? So you can make for your clients to imagine the most peaceful and comfortable scenes in your brain when you come to the emotional difficulties. So the technique is like this. Your emotion is suffering. Stop. Stop thinking, stop acting, and stop reacting. Just stop. Keep your breath very shortly. And then observe the context, observe what the others say, and observe what others do. Observe very shortly. and think about that. You don't have to think very long time. Just think about that, what it is, what's happening, and then act. That is our lesson. What is the goal? Is the objective of the SODA technique is to think differently. That's why the theme, the title of the SODA technique, think differently. When you come to the situation, and when you think about that, you can think about the several different possibilities of that context. So rather than to be frustrated, rather than to be angry all right away, you can think, and there should be different possibilities and different contexts and different meanings of that situation. And then you can take action. It is not late if you act or if you behave after you think about that. Okay, that's the fourth session. The fifth session is thinking and act flexibly. That is most difficult part for them, sometimes for ourselves as well. So the lesson of this session composed of that recognize the consequences of rigid or inappropriate behavior patterns and flexibly accepting advice from others. That's the second lesson. The third lesson is coping with situational changes. In this lesson, I will focus on the flexibly accepting advice from others and situational changes. What is this? What is this animal? It might be horse, it might be donkey, whatever. But even if I think this is a horse, if the others, this maxim is not always right? The majorities are not always right. But at the same time, if the other person, 4 out of 5, think or say that it's donkey, you should think about that. It might be a donkey. It doesn't mean that if the 80% is right, but even if you think this is a horse, if other people around me, the 80% of them think or say this is donkey, you have to stop and at least think about that. That is donkey rule. So we teach that rule. And another stepwise sequencing for coping strategy with the situation change. I told you that the situation must be changed always. So this is the steps and rules for the situation changes. It's the ACPCS. First, clearly define the problem. To define the problem, you have to stop, observe, and think about that, right? And then you have to think alternative ways. Generate at least 3 possible interpretations or solutions. There must be pros and cons of these different 3 situations, and you can select one solution out of this, after you consider the pros and cons of every single situation. For example, I visited a famous restaurant with a friend, but it was closed for the day. It's very frustrating situation, isn't it? And there are several alternatives. The first one is find another restaurant, and then the other alternative, which might be a little bit inappropriate. Let's separate today and come here tomorrow. And what else? You can wait for 24 hours for the restaurant to open tomorrow. That might be the alternative, theoretically. So the mental practice is the present or talk about all different kind of alternative ways of the behavior. And there are pros and cons for each decision, and you can pick one of 3. That is the mental practice for flexible thinking. The key message is that there are alternative ways of behavior, and there are pros and cons and a dark side and a light side for each decisions. You cannot make perfect decision for this stuffs. So we let the participants explore all these things together, and it's very useful mental practices. Now we have application part, so we can very fastly run through that because all the principles were already covered in the first part, and this part from session 6 to 12 are application part. So the basic principle of this part is this one. We are covering the take care of oneself, adapting to new environments, taking care of finances, searching for jobs, applying for jobs, preparing for job interview, adapting to professional life. So we the participants, adults, learned already about the planning, organization, time management, emotion regulation, and cognitive flexibility. When we span all these abilities to these different activities, we can span these activities and align every single abilities to the daily living skills. So it is not all the functions we need to do these tasks very well, but at least the main ability to do well of these skills are this one. For example, taking care of finances. It's all about planning, organization, and time management, and emotional regulation. I told you that impulse control is important. And taking care of oneself involves planning, organization, and time management. Emotional regulation might not be the main part of taking care of yourself. But in terms of the applying for the job interview, and real actual social life, the professional life, the wider range of executive skills are needed. For example, adapting to the professional life is a final goal and a very ultimate goal of every different activities, and it needs every single different kind of executive functions in the life. As you already know, the professional lives in your workplace, the lives in the workplace is hard. It's very complicated for everybody, not for themselves, but for ourselves. It's very hard. So we need very complicated and very deliberate juggling of every different part of executive function. And another important concept for this, the application part is stepping. So we introduced these concepts in the second sessions of the program. And as we already learned about goal setting, planning, priority, or something like that. So every activities, every daily lives needs this kind of stepping. So you should apply all these steps for everything you do in your daily life. So we introduced this concept in the sixth session and apply the repeat it until the end of the program. The stepping is the decoding the action and steps in order to achieve the goal. The first step is goal setting. Everything needs it. Even we cook the instant ramen, we have to set the goal. Making the ramen and eating it for the lunch, that's the goal. And gathering information. Do you read the instructions behind the part of the instant ramen? That is the most optimal way to make your ramen delicious. So gathering information is the second step. And step 3 is making a to-do list. We have to boil the water and tear the envelope of the ramen and make a decision whether put the first and such things, and setting priorities. What is the priorities of your cooking ramen? It might be the time. You have to have the lunch at 1 p.m. punctual. Or your priority might be making the most delicious ramen in the world. Or your priority might be what? Might be just escaping from the hunger state or something like this. Depending on your preference and your circumstances, you have to set the priority and also planning time. The sixth step is taking action. From the goal setting to taking action, there is 6 different steps. And this is the key message is a repetition of the previous lessons, that if you take one action, you have to decode. You have to subdivide your action into 6 steps, and you must not skip that. So that is the key message. For example, goal setting is to set a goal for the activity before starting and collecting the information needed to carry out the task from various sources such as internet, books, and the other person. And making a to-do list, create a list of specific tasks that need to be completed to accomplish your activity, and priority, and planning time, and taking action. The other important message for this is that this one. In taking action, we give the message that important thing in taking action is first, start, even if you are not fully prepared. Preparing something before you start is a rule maxim, but start even you are not completely 100% prepared. Sometimes they have very perfectionistic way of thinking and perfectionistic trait and black or white thinking and cognitive inflexibility. They do not start ever forever until they think that the preparedness is complete, 100%. So we put this lesson here, start even if you are not 100% prepared. And regulate your emotions in negative situations or outcomes. And seek advice from others. You remember donkey rule, so it is important for the flexible thinking and cope with changes in the situation. So we want the participants, the adults, autistic adults, to memorize these lines every single sessions. I would recommend you to memorize when you teach the autistic adults as well. In the session, the 6th session, the 12th session, it is real survival toolkit for the autistic adults. Session 6 is daily life management, and session 7 is adapting to environmental changes, and 8th session is personal finances, budgeting, and 9th session is finding job, and introducing yourself, interview, and workplace. I'll briefly introduce each session's content. The session 6 involves, now you can aware that why we call it as a survival toolkit. So the contents of this session is a personal hygiene. I already mentioned that hygiene is one of the most problem things for autistic individuals, and home management, such as not a huge thing, just cleaning your own room, and laundry, and even clothing care, and recycling and waste preparation. I think it might be culturally sensitive things, but recycling is a huge deal in Korea. And health management, such as including diet management, weight control when you have a certain kind of the health problems when you visit the doctor, and also safety issues, responding to emergencies, and protecting personal information. We include this in these sessions because the scams and voice calling, or all the scams from in these days using AIs or everything, is one of the problems everyday lives for the a little bit vulnerable individuals. So we provide these examples for these lessons. For example, steps for cooking, choosing a dish you want to eat, and looking up the recipe, gathering information. It's a stepping. So the planning, gathering information, and preparing ingredients, and cooking according to the recipe, and cleaning up the kitchen. So we decode these activities into stepping, stepwise sequencing, goal setting. Cooking. I will cook vongole pasta for dinner. That is a goal setting. And you have to gather information, such as searching for the recipe online. ChatGPT provided very nicely. And check the required ingredients and find a store where you can buy them. And estimate how long the cooking will take. And making to-do list. First, go to grocery shopping. Check what ingredients you already have at home, at your refrigerator. And review the recipe and prepare the ingredient and cook the dish. It's your list, and then priorities, and then time planning. How long you need for grocery shopping, how long you need to the cooking itself, how long you need for cleaning the kitchen, how long you need the eating, and something like that, and take action. And again, there are 4 rules. Start even you are not fully prepared. Start even if you have, for example, the grapeseed oil rather than to olive oil. Just start and regulate your emotions in negative situations or outcomes. Even if your pasta is not completely satisfying, just eat and prepare the other situation, the other opportunity to cook better, and seek advice from others, other recipes, ChatGPT, or other people you have expertise in cooking, and cope with changes in the situation as well. We assign the homework to do something, to some cook when you go home, according to the stepwise sequencing. This one, what is a healthy diet, what is the ingredient, what is the nutrition facts, what are the BMI or something like this. Every single trivial, detailed information, we give those kind of detailed information to them, and also put those things in this manual as well. Those are pictures from actual participants when we gave them the homework to cook according to the stepwise sequencing. In Korea, many people with developmental disabilities are trained to be a barista, the coffee maker, or the baker, or the baking, the cookie or the bread. So some of them are trained with the baking things, and sometimes they have a cook the hobby. So we give them the homework, the practice, activities of cooking according to the stepwise sequencing. What are your planning? What what are your goal, what are your priority, what are your time management, and record that everything and give us a picture of your activity. And that is their picture. Isn't it? It's amazing, isn't it? And a cleaning room as well. We repeat those exercises with them in terms of the cleaning as well. They show this room before they learn to set the goal and managing time and consulting to others and priorities, etc., etc. And they send the pictures like this. It's amazing, isn't it? So they actually learn how to do that when you decode all the steps. When you repeat all the steps and lessons again and again, they learn and they are motivated and they would like to show very good things and show advancement to us by these pictures. We have practice. Remember, the goal should be measurable, observable, suitable, and time-bound. So think about that. In the process of gathering information, every single clothes has a tag inside the clothes. Whether you have to dry clean this, you can machine washing or something like this. So gathering information starts very, very simple point. So let's move on to the 7th session, enhancing adaptation to environmental changes. So we teach several strategies again. The first one is strategies for adapting quickly to new environments, which is very hard. And the second lesson is organizing the environment to adapt, because adaptation to environmental changes, if you adapt to the changes of environment, it is more beneficial for you. Your own environment is already organized. You can catch up. You can aware that environment has been changed or not, and where is the stuff you need or something like that. So organizing your own environment is the first step to adapt to the environmental changes. So that is the lesson. And we teach the strategies for organizing your own environment, such as clothing and your room or something. Also, again, the monitoring yourself, identifying environmental conditions that suits me, because it is quite autism-specific notions. It might be quite autism-specific because autistic people have their own very strong preferences for the environments. It is very tightly related to the sensory sensitivity, and they tend to have the preferable environmental arrangement themselves first. And I think my belief is that we should respect their own preferences in terms of the sensory sensitivity and their own way to arrange everything. Unfortunately, the other environments, other people do not understand. From very early childhood, they do not they do not think about respecting their own environment. They are not tend to be respected their own preference and what is preferred to them, what is disliked to them. So in this session, we try to help them to identify environmental conditions that suits themselves first. Sometimes they need to control environment. Sometimes they need to protect or control themselves. If you already aware that what you like, what you dislike, or sometimes you can ask other people to control the environment. If you aware what you like or what you dislike. So, for example, there is a lot of tasks and a lot of homeworks and practices in this session, and how to organize your environment. For example, the clothes. You can categorize items by content, types, topic, color, size, or season. So you can organize the clothes by types, such as jacket, t-shirt, and sweater, or something like that. Or topic, very formal, casual, or intermediate, or color, and season, and context. So we can organize even our clothes by categories, as you learned in the second session. Such things, and we keep the informations, very trivial informations regarding the clothes box and clothes packs or everything. What else? The stuffs we have to organize. Utensils. What else? Cables. The cables are always problematic. Containers files, and you can use the containers files and compartments of folders. Give them all the information. Or folders in your computer. Autistic individuals have every single files in your brain regarding the social etiquettes and social behaviors. To organize the folders in your computer is another great stuff to be organized. It's a real picture. It's an actual pictures from our participants. Before that, the closer was that, and we taught all the organizing skills and all the trivials and details and the steps and everything. We taught them to use this kind of boxes to arrange the cables. You can use that. And also, when you move to the next session, is the personal finances and we already shared your own experiences. It is quite didactic lessons regarding the income, expense management, budgeting, rational purchasing, and also leisure activities. So we teach these things and how to open bank accounts. In these days, you don't have to go to the bank in person. You can open your account in the apps and mobile phone, or you can visit bank physically if you need it, if you prefer that. So put the information regarding that in the book and teach that. And leisure activities is tightly related to the budgeting. Also, the autistic people quite often have difficulties regarding differentiating the leisure time and the work time. So we teach that lesson in this session and planning for the leisure activities. The ninth session is find a suitable job using executive function. It might be very challenging tasks for them because they are in very different situations and they're very different levels of preparedness for finding actual job, and sometimes they are helped by the agencies for the disabled person, and sometimes they are searching their job independently. Sometimes they go to very prestigious universities and they are prepared for getting a job very quickly. Sometimes they are just prepare for a long time, and they are in a different stages of preparedness. So we have to be very cautious to teach about that. But anyhow, we have to teach them, give a lesson regarding the basic principles regarding finding a suitable job. There is a suitable job for yourself according to your preference, your ability, and your preparedness, your certificate or whatever. We teach them to begin career exploration itself and methods as well. The beginning is quite hard sometimes, and independently is a key. Sometimes even in the high school students, when they comes to the graduation of high school, in Korea, the army service is mandatory. They have to go to army service unless you have any specific reason to be exempted from that. But almost everybody who has autistic individuals are exempted, or they are waived from the army services after some kind of the test. When you are 18 years of old age, you have a letter from the government agency, the Ministry of Army Forces or whatever, Land Security, that you have to appear in the evaluation processing for your eligibility for the army service. You have to know that you have to go there if you are just in the transition of your adulthood. But 90% of my clients, third grade high school students, do not know that they should appear in the eligibility testing process. Something like that. Even for the searching for the major in your college and job searching and job possibility, they do not know that they have to search for how to enter the college, what are the majors you can have in the college, and whether you are go to the military services and something like this. So the key is that beginning independently. The concept we want to give them the concept that job searching or major searching is your own job, not your parents. So that is a key message of this lesson, I guess. As a practice, checking the job conditions, understanding the criteria needed for job selection, and listing the conditions I prefer or I want to avoid. It is very important to know what I dislike and evaluating importance of each condition on a scale according to my preference and my conditions, such as we have prepared the practice for this, such as listing the criteria and the conditions that match my own characteristics and importance of each conditions and priority of each condition. So we are practicing this exercise with the autistic adults as well. The next session is introducing myself to a desired employer, which is writing a resume, such things. This is a very typical format of Korean resume, and we provide some examples and how to fill it and how to avoid the unpreferable things, such things. 11th session is the job interview using your own executive function. The first step is to prepare for interview. Second is the interview, the posture and attitude when you come to the interview, and thinking differently for adapting to the unexpected events during the job interview. We explain the role of interview and preparation procedures, the daytime and planning and organization or whatever, and common questions and attitude. And when you come to the unexpected questions, unexpected frustrations during the interview, what to do, such as using, do you remember the SODA technique? Stop, observe, and action. Situation, I have my final interview on the week and thought. And in some case, they already think that the interview will be gone wrong. So they will probably try to find my weaknesses to reject me. What if my weaknesses become obvious to the interviewer? Such kind of the negative thoughts. And behavior is, the result is anxiety, restlessness, and a high level of discomfort. After you apply the SODA technique, the situation is the interview is ahead and thought, since I've made it into the final interview, the interviewer likely already have a positive impression of me and think differently and make you keep cool and make your anxiety and anger, distress is not obvious in the situation. So in this session, we exercise the mock interview with the other people, their peers, and in front of the instructors, and videotape it and share feedback with each other. Very practical session. And the last session is learning how to succeed in the workplace using executive function. So we teach them basic attitude for working life, working place etiquette, such as very basic things, such as neat appearance. It is all integration of theory of mind. The workplace is a place which you work together with other person, and other people are looking at you, and other people might think who you are and what kind of person you are from what you are doing to the other person. So appearance, punctuality, diligence, and attitude toward receiving instructions, especially when you have instructions which is different from your own thoughts, and reporting task, break time attitude, lunchtime attitude, and sick leave, and preparing to leave work sometimes, and life after work. And hygiene etiquette, greeting, conversation, respectful attitude, and whether you want or not, there might be an issue regarding the gender. So you have to be very cautious if you meet the issues regarding the gender or sexual issues. Company dinner etiquette it might be quite cultural sensitive, but a group dinner is one of the cultures of Korean companies. Such kind of etiquettes are taught. And etiquette for congratulatory and condolence events such as marriage, funeral, or sometimes the first birthday of your your colleagues. Is quite cultural, but those kind of life events are very community stuffs in Korea, so there should be an etiquette, especially for the sad things, the greetings, the funeral, or something like that. Maintaining appropriate boundaries with other people and other workplace manners are taught in this lesson. And salary management, workplace training, employee responsibilities, coping with changes, again, we apply the think differently skills in this situation as well. And SODA technique as well. It's application sessions. In the last part, we have a graduation ceremony. The adults are quite satisfied in this ceremony as we make it very cheerful and congratulatory environment. As a concluding remark, I would like to share some thoughts regarding utilization and expansion of this program. As I already mentioned, we developed this program for the autistic adults because we need it. Because in our clinic, in my clinic, more than 80% of people have autistic conditions. Because my research priority is autism spectrum, and also the autistic people are accumulated in my clinic. So we needed it very urgently, deliberately. So we developed it for the autistic people first. But I assume that this program is quite comprehensive. It can be decoded as like a Lego blocks. You can sort out something if you really do not need that. So you can use that. So it is quite suitable for people with ADHD or OCD or anxiety issues, mood problems, and also the people with the rehabilitation stages after the psychotic state, such as day hospital or inpatient settings as well. So I think these lessons might be quite useful for any kind of neurodevelopmental disorders or psychiatric conditions as well. And also I was asked regarding the people with borderline intelligence or intellectual disability. I think yes, it is applicable, but as you already aware, these lessons are quite tight. Sometimes the concepts are hard and it needs higher level of the intelligence to understand everything. So you have to divide one session into the small pieces and go slowly. And also you can modify. If you keep the whole concept, the basic concept and axis of the lessons, you can change the detailed wording to easier one. So actually we are preparing to apply it to the mild level of intellectual disability and borderline intellectual functioning in the protected workplace with the Samsung Electronics. So we will see what's happening to them. And also university counseling centers. A lot of my colleague professors need it for their graduate students as well. So I recommend to send the books for them. And finally, after we observe what's happening to the autistic adults in several groups, we notice adulthood might be a little bit late. So they have their own fixed habit. They did great job. You already saw the picture they sent us after they very diligently completed their homework. But at the same time, they already have their own fixed belief, attitude, and behavior, and perfectionistic things, and etc., etc. So far, the Korean researchers who are willing to use this program, if you name that as an EFABE, our program, for now, it should be for adults. And if you are planning to use it for the adolescents, please consult us before you start it. Session 1 to 5 should be included. It should not be omitted. So it should include the principles into your program, and always include connecting and stepping, and homework review should be included. Because it's a freely available program by the manual, you can do it yourself. Even if you do not complete your workshop, you can use it with this. But if you use it more properly, the workshop should be helped. And please use it widely. Tell us what you experience and what you observe in your program. It will help us to develop this one to more comprehensive and more suitable one in this society. Thank you for listening for a long time. Thank you.